That's internet problem only.
Hmm. 1 second, I'm starting to record.
Already started, ma'am.
Is it okay? Fine. Yeah. Good afternoon, students.
Afternoon, ma'am.
Now let's start this lecture 9 under module 5. In the previous session, we have seen how to write a unit test with MR unit tool and how to run locally on test data by using a local job runner and how to test the drivers also. We have to write unit tests because if we run this map reduce jobs at a stretch on a larger cluster, we may not be able to understand where the error actually arises. So we need to write unit tests for each and every function that we are writing for the job or for the processing and see whether the input and the output the output is according to the expected output or not with respect to a given input. Okay, that we have to test by writing this unit tests. And also we need to check it by running it on a local job runner and also by testing the drivers. Now, while testing the drivers, we have seen two approaches. One is to run the local job runner by using a local test file on the local machine, and the other one is to run the job on a mini cluster, which has some daemons running on it, some test programs running on it, right? Once this operates very well on a mini cluster without any errors, then we can scale it onto a larger cluster. Now, in today's lecture, we are going to see how to run a job on a cluster directly by packaging it into a job and how to launch the job and understand the MapReduce web user interface, how exactly it is represented. What does each and every table try to give, what type of information that we are going to see now. Now that we are happy with the program running on a small data test data set, we are ready to try it on the full data set on a Hadoop cluster. We have seen how to write unit tests and how to run the job on a local job runner by using the test drivers and also to run it at a HDFS scale on a mini cluster. Both will help us to understand whether there are any errors in the output according to whether it is the output is according to what is expected or not. Once we are ready with that, then we can scale our job to run on a larger cluster. Now the local job runner uses a single JVM to run a job, so as long as all the classes that your job needs are on its class path, then things will just work very well because you're just running with a single JVM and it is running a single job, but that is not the actual scenario, right? You will be running the jobs on multiple nodes on a larger cluster, which is actually running multiple jobs at the same time, right? Simultaneously at the same time. Now, how to coordinate among all these, how to understand their progress, how to monitor their progress, how to check whether some nodes have failed in the middle. All these we are going to see today. Now, in a distributed setting, things are a little more complex, as I said. While working with a single machine in a pseudo distributed mode, it is very easy to understand how we can run a particular map reduce job. But when we come to a distributed setting, there are lots of nodes involved on which the map reduce tasks run simultaneously. So things start becoming complex. For a start, a job's classes must be packaged into a job jar file to send to the cluster. Why we need to pack this? This jar file is like a package file where we pack all the Java files required for a specific task along with its metadata and associated resources into a specific file called as jar file. Now this jar file can be put on the cluster and the job trackers can pick up those jar files in order to execute their tasks. Now Hadoop will find the job jar automatically by searching for the jar on the driver's class path that obtains the class set in the set jar by class method. This we have seen, right? When we have written a program, MapReduce program, for finding the maximum temperature recorded across the globe in a particular year, there we have seen how to set a jar file. This is our second step. After creating the job object, we need to set the jar by class file in order to pack the jar file and keep it readily available for the job trackers. Okay. Now, alternatively, if you want to set an explicit jar file by its file path, you can use the set jar method. Okay, if you want it to be set by a class, you can use set jar by class. But if you explicitly want to set it by its file path, then you can use set jar method directly. Now, how to set this client's class path? The user's client-side class path set by Hadoop jar is made of these these three components. One is the job jar file, which contains the actual job packed into it, along with associated class files, and any jar files in the lib directory of the job jar file and the classes directory. If at all the classes directory is present, even the classes directory is also included into this jar file. And the class path defined by Hadoop class path, if at all it is set. All these three components will be put into this Hadoop jar file on the user's client side class path. Now this explains why you have to set Hadoop class path to point to dependent classes and libraries if you are running using the local job runner without a job jar file. That is the Hadoop's class name if it is not set. If it is running in a pseudo distributed mode, then it is necessary to set this Hadoop class path. Now, creating a job jar file is conveniently achieved using a build tool such as Ant or Maven. These are automated build tools which we use to build the projects using these MapReduce jobs. Now, the following Maven command, what we are using here, will create a jar file called hadoop-examples.jar. This is the jar file that we are trying to create. In the project directory containing all the compiled classes. The classes are ready now. Only the jar file has to be packed, and these classes can be put into the jar file and the entire job can be packed. Okay, for that the command that should be used is %MVN. This stands for Maven. Maven is an automated build tool. Okay, using this Maven package, use -d skip test. Okay, this we are using in order to pack the jar file. Now, if you have a single job per jar, you can specify the main class to run in the jar file's manifest file itself. But if the main class is not in the manifest, it must be specified on the command line compulsorily. Okay, and any dependent jar files can be packaged in a lib subdirectory. Means any dependent jar files that are dependent on this primary jar file where exactly the job is packed. Any such dependent jar files can be packed into a lib subdirectory in the job jar file. Okay. Now similarly, resource files can be packaged in a classes subdirectory. If you want to associate further any resource files, they can be packed into a classes subdirectory. Now on a cluster, and even for the pseudo distributed mode as well as the cluster, map and reduce tasks run in separate JVMs, and their class paths are not controlled by Hadoop class path. Because cluster has multiple nodes that are running, right? That are running various map reduce jobs. Now this map and reduce job map and reduce tasks run in separate JVMs, and their class paths can be controlled by this class path property. So because Hadoop class path is a client-side thing and only sets the class path for the driver JVM which submits the job. Okay, it is the client-side setting. It is not on the cluster side property that has to be set. So and only sets the class path for the driver JVM, which actually submits the job that is already configured. Now, instead, the user's task class path is comprised of the following components. It contains a job jar file and any jar files, any Java archive files contained in the lib directory of the job jar file and the classes directory. If at all any other resources are added, all these will be packed into this jar file. And any files added to the distributed cache using the lib jars option or the add file to class path method on the job. And if any the distributed cache, even these also will be added to the task class path. Now, how to package the dependencies? A job jar file has many dependencies, right? How to package these dependencies in order to run the job in Olsum. Now, given these different ways of controlling what is on the client and task class paths, there are corresponding options for including library dependencies for a job. For this, unpack the libraries and repackage them into the job jar file. Okay, and package the libraries in the lib directory of the job jar again, and keep the libraries separate from the job jar and add them to the client class path via Hadoop class path and to the class path via and to the task class path via lib jars. If you want to add it to the client class path, the dependencies to the client class path, you can use Hadoop class path. And if you want to add those dependencies to the task class path, then you can add it by using -lib jars. Now, the last option is using the distributed cache is simplest from a build point of view because dependencies don't need rebundling in the job jar file. Okay, and also the distributed cache can mean fewer transfers of jar files around the cluster since files may be cached on a node between tasks. Means the recently or more frequently used files can be cached on a particular node so that they can be reused again and again. And this will actually mean fewer transfers of jar files around the cluster, across the cluster. Now, user jar files are added to the end of both the client class path and the task class path. It is added on either side, which in some cases can cause a dependency conflict with Hadoop's built-in libraries if Hadoop uses a different incompatible version of a library that your code uses. So you should be careful when this incompatibility of due to this version differences arises. Now, sometimes you need to be able to control the task class path order so that your classes are picked up first. Say if you want to give high priority to your classes so that the job involving those particular classes have to be run first, then that can be set by controlling the task class path. Now, on the client side, you can force Hadoop to put the user class path first in the search order by setting this Hadoop user class path first. So if you want certain preferences, if you want certain classes to be picked up first, then you can set by using Hadoop user class path first environment variable to true. You have to enable it to true so that the specified classes can be picked up with good priority, higher priority. For the task class path, you can set another property map reduce dot task dot class path dot first. Again, that also can be set to true so that this class path will be selected with high priority. Now note that by setting these options, you change the class loading for Hadoop framework dependencies, but only in your specific job, which could potentially cause job submission or tasks to fail. So use these options with caution. You should be very cautious while using these two properties, setting to true. Why? Because they may result in job submission or task to fail. Okay, so you have to be very careful. You should sparingly use these two properties when setting them in order to give priority to specific classes. Now let's see how to launch a job. Now to launch the job, we need to run the driver, specifying the cluster that we want to run the job on with the hyphen configuration option. So if you want to select on which cluster you want to run the job, okay, that can be specified by using hyphen conf. First, for that, you have to unset the Hadoop class path. Why? Because this is on the client side. First, unset the Hadoop class path, then use Hadoop jar file, pack that entire job into Hadoop examples.jar file. This is your jar file into which you're packing the job. From this max temperature driver, this is your test driver, which is readily available to you now because you have performed all the tests in the previous session. What you have seen by writing this driver, you have performed some tests, right? So you are giving this test driver and using a hyphen configuration, what we have mentioned here, that option, you're using Hadoop cluster.xml by reading the local file. That is the NCDC, National Weather Data Set, right? That weather data set data you're reading from this local file and using this configuration file Hadoop cluster.xml, you are starting to launch the job. Now the wait for completion method on job launches the job and polls for progress. You have seen, right, how to start a job. You use job object dot wait for completion. Now this wait for completion method on job launches the job and polls for progress. It waits and monitors the progress, writing a line summarizing the map and reduces progress whenever either changes. If any map task progress happened or any reduced task progressed, that will be summarized by sending a single line to the user interface, indicating that this is progressing up to this percentage, or this progress is up to this percentage. That status will be written by this wait for completion method. Now Hadoop comes with a web user interface. I think before going to this, I'll show you how exactly a job can be launched and how the configuration file looks like. Can you see this screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, once you launch a job, the output will be like this. See the first line, total input paths to process 101. What do we mean by this? The total input splits, because the entire NCDC data set is very large. That entire data set will be divided into smaller work units called as input splits. Here the total number of files are 101 such files. Okay, and then you can see the running job, the job ID. In the second line, you can see the job ID, and then the progress of map and reduce. Initially, it is 0%, and then map progress to 28%. But you can notice until map has completed, reduce could not start the process. Why? Because reduce uses the output of map job. That is why until map completed, reduce didn't start. Once the map is 100%, then the reduce also started, and it quickly finished in no time. Why? Because the data it has to process is very small. All the processing is done by the map task, and only the consolidation, sorting, merging, and consolidation is done by the reduce task. That is why reduce task will complete faster when compared to map task. Now the job completed ID, once again, which job is completed, the job ID is given, and the counters, which counters information is available. The job counters, total 19 job counters are there here. That is launched, reduced tasks, the number of launched reduced tasks, rack local map tasks, launched map tasks, data local map task in the next page. What are all this? Rack local map task and data local map task. Rack local map task says that, say if one node on the same rack, one node is engaged with a map task, then it searches for another node on the same rack. That is called as rack local map. But if the node is available to perform a map task where the data is residing in the first instance itself, then it is called as data local map task. Okay, so total data local map tasks here are 45 and rack local map tasks are 82. When data local map tasks are not available, then it will be shifted onto a different node where on a same rack but a different node, that is called as rack local map task. Okay, and we have file bytes read, how many bytes of data is read, HDFS bytes read, all this information is available. Map reduce framework, how many reduce input groups are there, combine output records, map input records, reduce shuffle bytes, all this information is seen when a job is launched and executing. Now the output includes more useful information here. Before the job starts, its ID is printed. I have shown you the ID, right? And this is needed whenever you want to refer to the job in log files. Once the job is completed and you want to refer some information about the job, when you look into the log files, then you should be able to identify that particular job. For that, job ID is highly necessary. And when interrogating it via the Hadoop job command, if you want to know which job you are inspecting, for that also job IDs are very much required. And when the job is complete, its statistics known as counters are printed. These are all the counters in this page, whatever you have, all these are the job counters. Now, these are very useful for confirming that the job did what you expected. This will make you understand whether this job is executing according to your expectations or not, according to what you expected or not. Now, for example, for this particular job, if we take, we can see that 275 GB of input data was analyzed. You can see from last fourth line in the shaded region, just observe from last fourth line. You can see here map input bytes, around 275 GB of input data was analyzed. Okay, this is the input for the map phase. Now, read from around 34 GB of compressed files on HDFS. That you can notice here. Now, from top, you see the fourth line. HDFS bytes read. Around 335 GB of data is read. 35 GB of data is read, which are actually in compressed file format on HDFS. We are giving here. Did you notice here? From the top, fourth line, we have HDFS bytes read. Total 34 GB data is read. That is from NCDC data set. It read those many bytes, 35 GB of bytes, and input splits are made, and they are given as map input, where you can see the last map input bytes, total 275 GB of data. Lots of such data is read from the NCDC data set. Input splits, I mean. Input splits are read from the NCDC data set, and the input was broken into 101 zipped files of reasonable size, that is mentioned here in the beginning. The starting line of the shaded region, you have total input paths to process is 101. Okay, these are 101 zipped files of reasonable size. Reasonable size means it has to span a particular map task. It should not underutilize a node, right? It has to utilize a node up to its capacity. For that, we say reasonable size. Okay, so the input was broken into 101 zipped files of reasonable size. So there was no problem with not being able to split them. It is just packed into 101 input splits in this case, and passed on to map and reduce phases where it has read 35 GB data. HDFS bytes read are 35 GB data each time from the input splits, and total map input bytes read are 275 GB. Okay, it goes on like this in order to produce the output of map job, and which is utilized by the combiner phase, and further consolidation is done by the reduce phase. Okay, this is how we can understand this job output once it is launched. Now let's get back to the presentation. Now let us understand the web user interface of the MapReduce, so that when the jobs are running, how to understand what is presented in the web user interface. Now Hadoop comes with a web user interface for viewing information about your jobs that are running. It is useful for following a job's progress. It is useful to monitor how far a particular job has been executed, how many map tasks are running, how many reduced tasks are running, how many of them are pending, how many of them are killed or failed. All this information can be easily monitored by using this web UI. It is useful for following a job's progress while it is running, as well as finding job statistics and logs after the job has completed. Now, if you want to see job statistics after one particular job has been completed, you can easily refer to a job tracker's history and find out how that particular job has been executed, how long it has taken, how many map tasks it has done, how many reduced tasks it has run. All this information can be seen from this job statistics. Now you can find the UI. You can find the user interface at job tracker-host by giving the number here, port number 50030. When you give this, it opens a user interface where you can monitor or keep track of the progress of your map jobs. And this is how a job tracker page looks like. In the beginning, see here, it gives the state of the job tracker. It also tells us the version of this particular Hadoop on which this job tracker is running, and when it is compiled last time, and even the state of this particular job tracker and when it has started running this job, and the job ID in the identifier. All these will give you some core information about the job tracker. It gives the Hadoop version, when it was last compiled, when this particular job started, and what is the current status, and what is the identifier, job ID, with which this job is running. Okay, all this information is provided in the initial segment of this window, and later section contains the cluster summary. This cluster summary tells us about the capacity of a cluster and the utilization of that cluster. In this, you have first column, you have the number of maps that are running, the number of reduced jobs that are running, and the total job submissions for this particular cluster. Here, this cluster is running total 2 jobs. That is why the total submissions here is given as 2. And the number of task trackers running on the nodes. Total 11 task tracker nodes are running on this particular cluster, and the capacity of this cluster is given in terms of map task capacity and reduced task capacity. This cluster's capacity is given in terms of, I'm repeating again, map task capacity and reduced task capacity. Now this map task capacity here is 88 across the cluster, and reduced task capacity in this cluster is 88. Okay, so this means that this cluster can handle up to 88 map tasks and 88 reduced tasks. Now the average task per node is 16. Overall average for that cluster is number of tasks it can run is total 16. And in the last column you can see blacklisted nodes. Blacklisted nodes are the nodes which encountered some system failure. Those types of nodes have to be notified here so that the job tracker will not pick those nodes in order to perform a particular task again and again unnecessarily. For that, you have the information about this blacklisted nodes also. Now, in the next part, you have job scheduling information, job tracker scheduling information. By default, its name, the name of the queue is default. Okay, and then the next section contains the details about the running jobs. It can display up to 100 jobs at a time, and each row represents a particular job. Now, again, in this running jobs table, you observe here, it specifies the job ID with which you can identify a particular job, and the priority given to it is normal here. And who is the owner of this job? Here it is root, and the name of that job. Did you notice this max temperature? We have created a job by giving the default name as max temperature. Sorry, the job name as max temperature. We have, when we created the job object, we have set the name of that job as max temperature. That is seen here. This helps us to easily identify a particular job based on its name, which indicates the purpose for which that particular job is running. And the next column contains map, how much percentage of the map tasks are completed. That is nothing but the total map tasks and the map task completed. That will give you the percentage of map tasks completed. The progress bar can be seen here. Here the map progress is 47% here in this case. And even the reduce total 30 and reduces not still didn't complete, because maps have to complete up to some extent in order to start the reduce task, not completely. Map need not completely finish its task, but up to some extent, if the map tasks are completed, they can start providing input to the reduce task, and reduce can initiate its execution. That is why here the reduce completed is 15%, but still no reduce tasks are completed. Total reduce tasks available are 30. So it slowly started the completion. Execution slowly started with the reduce phase. Okay, that is why it is a little lesser than the map phase. And last, job scheduling information. If any job scheduling information is present, that can be represented here. And in the next section, you can see the completed jobs information. Means all the jobs that are completed. Remember, on a cluster, multiple jobs will be running simultaneously. And one job may have completed little early. Some jobs might have completed little early. All that information will be provided in this completed jobs section, along with their priority, owner, name of the job, map. You can notice here, percentage of map tasks completed is 100% in this case. Total map tasks are 14 and all 14 are completed, and reduced tasks are 30 and all reduced tasks are completed. Okay. Remember, on this cluster, this information is being given by the job tracker page. And job scheduling information, it is not applicable for this scenario. Okay, and it also gives information about the failed jobs. In this case, there are no failed jobs. That is why it is giving none. And see here, local logs, you have two types of log files. One is the log directory and one is the job tracker history. At a time, in this running jobs, only information about 100 jobs can be seen. But what about the jobs that are already completed? If you want to look into their details, those will be available with this job tracker history and also with this log. Log will give all the details of recently completed jobs, and job tracker history has all the information about the jobs that completed execution. Now this is the job page. When you click on job ID, notice here, when I just click on this ID or when I click on this ID, then it opens this job page. In this job page, you have the details in the starting in this part. You have the user details, the job name and the job file. Understand this carefully. This job file is a .xml file. It is a configuration file which tells you what properties are set with what values for this particular instance of the job. That information will be given in the job file. If you want to see for this job what properties are set to what values, then you can just click on this link. It will open the .xml file and you can see all the configurations and their properties. Now next is the job setup, whether it is successful or not, whether it completed its execution successfully or not, that is given, and the status of the job setup is successful, means initiating that job is successful, not completed, sorry. Job setup means initiating that job, whether it is successfully completed or not, along with linking with the dependencies and configuration files, whether the entire task of setting up is successful or not, that is mentioned in the job setup. And then the status of this job, whether it is running or whether it is pending or it has completed, that will be given in the status bar. And then the when this job has started and for how much duration it has run, that information is also available. This will help us to understand how much time is taken by a job in order to run that particular task. Okay. And the next table, observe this next table. It just gives us the information about how many map tasks and reduce tasks are running. Here the number of tasks, total number of tasks are 101, total number of map tasks are 101, and total number of reduced tasks are 30. Okay, in this, number of map tasks pending 0, number of reduced tasks pending is also 0. Again, in the next column, running map tasks are 0, but running reduced tasks are 33. Means it tells us that all the map tasks have completed, which is identified, mentioned here, 101, but the reduced tasks are still running because they depend on the output of map tasks. So they have to wait up to some extent till the maps will give their output, will start giving their output. Only then the reduce can start its processing. That is why it started slowly, and out of 33, here only 5 reduced tasks have completed so far. Okay, and this progress will keep refreshing eventually at periodic intervals of time. This job page and job tracker page will be refreshed with the present status of that job execution. And then here you can see failed tasks or attempts. Here there are no failed tasks or attempts. That is why it is just giving 0. And you can see this last section where you can see the map completion graph and reduce completion graph. Here, because all the map tasks have completed, here you observe that 100% map tasks have completed in the first section. That is why it is giving all the map tasks have completed. It is showing that all the map tasks have completed. Okay, but see the reduced tasks. Here, the reduced completion graph is divided into 3 parts. That is copy phase, sorting phase, and reduce phase. What is the copy phase? When the maps output is being copied onto the reduces task tracker, that is called as the copy phase. And when this map output given as input to the reduced task, when that input is being sorted and merged, that is called as the sort phase. And finally, when that reduced function is running on that sorted data or merged data, that is called as the reduce phase. So this graph has 3 phases. This reduce completion graph has 3 phases. One is the copy phase, and this is the sort phase, and this is the reduce phase. I'm repeating once again. Copy is when the maps output is being copied onto the reduces task tracker. That is called as the copy phase. And when this when this reduced task tracker is sorting and merging the data, that is called as the sort phase. And finally, when the reduce function is executing on the merged data, that is called as the reduce phase, which will give the consolidated final output. Okay. Now this is how we need to understand about this job tracker page and job page in order to monitor the progress of any job execution. Now in the forthcoming session, we are going to see how to retrieve the results of a job that is executed and how to debug a job if at all it is raising any errors, and how Hadoop logs will help us to keep track of various types of output given by a job, and how to perform remote debugging. Okay, any doubts in the topics discussed today? Surya? Surya, I can hear you snoring. You're there, Surya? Shall we end the class then?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. In the next class, we are going to complete this module also, and that will be our syllabus completion as well. And you just try to attend that class also without fail. Okay, lecture 10 under this module will be our concluding lecture. Okay, see you in the next class.
Bye, ma'am.
Bye.